Hi, everybody. RivkaLeah here. And we are back with another wonderful installment of From Darkness to Radiance. And as always, I want to remind everybody I am not a doctor or a therapist. I talk about things that have happened in my life or things that have happened in the lives of people that I know. And this evening, I am graced with the presence of another beautiful human being whom I have met through school, another person through school. The school is amazing, and I've met so many just stellar people. So I have Marie with me tonight. So welcome, Marie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. I know we had a little bit of a hiccup trying to connect, timing and health issues, but I am so glad that we were finally able to do so. So, we've spoken a little bit, and most people know in my Darkness to Radiance podcast, I talk to people about their trauma, about entrepreneurial journeys, about work life, and all that kind of balance stuff. So, would you be willing to share a little bit of your experience with trauma?
Sure.
Awesome.
Okay. Anything specific you want me to start with, or?
Why don't you something that was the most impactful to
Okay.
you? I mean, and this isn't to minimize anyone's trauma, obviously. It's just something that sticks out to you, the biggest one that shifted your thought process.
Well, when we spoke before, I was thinking about it, and I actually mentioned, which trauma, because as you know, as there's most of us have at least a couple. The one that caused me to change everything in my life had to do with the end of my first marriage, which I facilitated that. It was a codependent. I was married to an alcoholic for many years, stayed 10 years longer than I should have. In the early years, it was physically abusive. Later, it was sexually abusive. And in the meantime, I was married to someone who was a fantastic father, but completely different, with just me. And to the outside world, everybody thought we were this perfect Norman Rockwell family. We were military, and it was very important that no one know what I was dealing with, because I didn't want anybody to blame me, and all of the things this was the culmination of many years of limiting beliefs on my part that I, once keeping promises, settling for less because you putting other people first, and my children always came first. And finally, the last straw for me, if I can be blunt, he came to me and wanted to rent me out to his friends. And that's the nicest way I know how to put that. And he thought that would, this came on the heels of 2 cancer diagnoses that turned out thankfully to be false, but they were months of, as you can imagine, high stress. I was 32 years old, 31, 32, with 2 little kids in school, grade school, and they told me I had cancer. And then they were like, "Oh, no, sorry, you don't, but have a nice day." So, yeah. Then,
So you just have them piled on
right.
here, just like one thing after another.
Right. And in the meantime, the only thing I could think to do was keep peace, sweep things under the rug until the mound got so big that I had to walk around it.
Right.
Because to keep the peace meant my children were happy and meant that I could plan. It took me 2 years to plan how to get away. Yeah. And I did. And it didn't end well. But my children ended well. They didn't end well, but they got the better start in life that I wanted them to have. This was so huge because in my family, there weren't a lot of divorces. For one thing, there weren't people who talked about abuse. There weren't, and it surprised everyone. I was the bad guy, the whole 9 yards. And I finally decided I could absorb that. If I could absorb what I'd been living with for 10 years, I could absorb that and take it, because it meant that they got a better start. And in the back of my mind, the little voice inside of me that was still there said, "You get one too. You get a new start too." Yes. Now, that's when the eating disorder began. Now, everything materializes. I have found this. Everything materializes physically in some form. Yeah. And your body stores trauma. Sometimes it stores it, and sometimes it just manifests things. And in my case, it was raging anorexia, bulimia. Mm-hmm. It's hard to guess by looking at me now, but at one point I was just so small, it was, ridiculous. And I thought nobody knew. I thought I had everything, the tiger by the tail and the whole 9 yards, and nobody knew. But that was it. I was in a point where I could no longer be subservient and do the things that I thought were expected of me to make everybody else happy, because I felt this. Then tell me if this sounds familiar or if you can even relate. I felt this panic of, I have to get out and I have to do it now, and this is my only chance.
Yes.
If I don't do it now, and it was several things that led up to this, but one of them was I was working at a women's center part-time, helping domestic violence victims, going to court and advocating for them. And so that's what gave me the courage, watching other women who I realized were not nearly as strong as I was emotionally. I thought I was a basket case. I lovingly refer to myself as a fully functional basket case for a lot of years. But watching these women who I saw the most god-awful injuries on, sitting and cringing and holding on to me for dear life like a 2-year-old child because they see their abuser in the courtroom, it gave me strength. It gave me a reason to go, this is not me. This could be so much worse for me, and I'm in such a better position than them. Why am I deliberately doing this? Why am I deliberately putting up with this when I will end up as that? It wasn't that I didn't want to end up as them. It was just I saw myself through somebody else's eyes, I guess is how the best way is to put that. And standing down a 6'3", 300-pound abuser who wants to grab her outside the courthouse, I found stores of strength in myself that I didn't know I had. And so I broke free. What I thought was, by helping other people, was that I was healing myself. And you mentioned that we met in school. That's where I realized that, oh boy, was I wrong. And the entrepreneurial journey came into play about 5 years ago. 6 now, because I'm 56. I was about to turn 50. And all I could think all day long, every day, with the job I'd been in for 20 years, is there has to be more. There has to be something more. I love to write. I've got an unfinished novel. I've written ebooks. I write, and there just has to be more. I mean, it wasn't like I thought my time was running out. It was just like, if not now, when? And so when I came to the school that we both come from, it was like, yeah, okay, there's other people that think like me. I'm not the only one. Isolation is the worst thing. I mean, I know people have phobias about groups of people, and I do to some degree, but isolation is the worst thing, because your mind plays tricks on you and you don't always realize when it's doing it.
Right.
And it's happened to me since I left my full-time work and began the entrepreneurial journey. But there was so much more healing that I had to do that I didn't even realize was there, because we're functional.
Right. And, this podcast is from darkness to radiance. And, I've said this to many other people, that my belief is no one is ever truly healed, because as we heal, we find more, and life continues to go on, and there are other things that we want to change and learn. So it's a journey that we continue on.
I agree. I think of it as degrees of healing, because you heal from the initial, I can't stop thinking about it. Like something terrible, like just for a quick example, many years ago, when I first separated from my first husband, I found him in bed with another woman. This was after a separation. This was like, to my mind, at 22 years old, that was the worst thing that could happen in a marriage, was finding your husband in bed with another woman. So once that has happened, I wondered, how long, when's the day that's not going to be the first thing I think of when I wake up and the last thing I think of when I go to bed? When is that day? And you know what? The day happened, and I was halfway through my day before I realized that day had even happened. So that's the first stage for me, is getting away from the emergency part of it, the oh my God, I can't wrap my head around it. And then you think, well, okay, I'm good. As I told you earlier, I'm at the point where I can talk about trauma, and it's almost like it happened to another person. That's a stage, but it doesn't mean I'm completely healed from it. Right. And it doesn't mean that, given the right conditions, I might not allow myself to be in that situation again if I'm not cautious and if I'm not deliberate. And I call it intentional living. That's, for me, what 2023 is about. For me, is intentional living. And that the intentional living that I do for me comes out and affects others. And I see it happen almost on the daily, which makes me so happy, that anything I say or do, or any part of that, helps somebody else.
Right.
That's the reason I get up every morning.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. And you're right. You know, when we've gone through something that's traumatic, triggers come up,
Yes.
challenges come up, and you don't know when they're going to come up. It like you said, you went through a whole day, just about a whole day, and you realize, oh my goodness, that's awesome. But you don't know that something, you weren't going to see somebody or hear a word or a smell or something to trigger you. A song that triggers you into that mindset again, and then the loop goes.
And if you're the more you get, the further you get in your journey, the more you're able to recognize these things as they start to happen. Like, there's very rarely a trigger that I don't see coming. Once in a while, recently I had one happen. Somebody said something very harmless at work, and it just rattled around. I didn't get all hurt and upset, but it rattled around, and it finally came to me. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I went outside to smoke, and yes, please don't judge me, I smoke. And it hits me. It's like God just gave it to me. It's like, it wasn't you. You didn't take it personally, but this is why. This is why that bothered you. You haven't dealt with this, so go deal with it, Marie. And so I did. It took about a week, but I didn't realize. But then some of the triggers, you see them coming, and it's like, it's like, to me, it's like badminton. I'm done with that. I'm done with that. And I hate to make light of it, but at some point, if you don't see it in some sort of light where you and I can smile. Right. And say, this is how I'm dealing with it. I mean, let's face it, being happy and having a little fun with something every chance you get helps you cope. And we're not into coping mechanisms, but at the same time, if you can incorporate that into the journey, it just makes it much more pleasant. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that I agree with what you just said, and I'm sorry if I was long-winded about it.
No, absolutely not.
I tend to be long-winded sometimes.
Hey, you know what? We have a lot to say, and we need to give ourselves the grace to say it, and there should be no apologies for it. So you are not long-winded at all. But this kind of touches on, when we touched on it just a tiny little bit, what do you have, or do you think you have any specific skills or strengths that have come out of this that you are implementing into your life? You did happen to mention one thing that struck me that I really liked.
What was that?
Your intentional living. Yeah.
That's the best gift I have ever given myself. And it was first given to me through school, through a live event that I attended. And giving myself grace was never something that I did. Now, there's a difference between giving yourself grace and giving yourself an excuse not to do something.
Exactly.
There's a fine line there. And actually, I think I wrote a couple of articles about that, but because I went through it. Right. And to this day, I still go through it, even with food choices. Even today, am I giving myself grace, or am I making an excuse to be a lazy butt? Just to put it bluntly, giving yourself grace. You can forgive other people. In fact, you probably have forgiven other people, and forgiveness isn't for them; it's for you.
Right.
But you give them a pass, or you give it. But so why is it so hard to give it to you? Because if you can't give yourself a little grace to not be perfect, then you're going to be living in a constant state of disappointment and fight or flight. And we understand now that the physical part of fight or flight is high cortisol, blood pressure issues. All these things can happen. So with the whole point of well, there's several points of intentional living, but one of the main points is to keep the physical and the emotional and the spiritual in alignment so that you're able to maintain a balance at least most of every day. And as you move along, you'll find that it's easier to do. Now, you'll have days where you're around people that are gonna, I call it infect you, like they're irritable, they're grouchy, they're da-da-da, and eventually you find it's infecting you and you need to get away. You might even have a little explosion of emotion, like a little, that happens still. Nobody's perfect. That's the thing is there's no one and done. There's nothing. I can give you 65 steps of things to do, and you can do all 65 in order, and you're still not going to be done and perfect.
Right.
It's an ongoing thing. And the best thing you can do for yourself is be very intentional, very kind. And as you said, give yourself some grace, because the only way to learn is to keep going.
is to keep going.
And the only way to grow, right?
Yep. And
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. So you have to continue to do it so that you do know what you can to
And
move
it's
forward.
uncomfortable, isn't it? Sometimes when you're just kind of in this,
Yeah.
I call it the no-fly zone. You're not really sure whether, and I know it's called other things by professionals that have been doing this longer than me, but I call it the no-fly zone because I'm not sure if I'm flying or if I'm just kind of cruising or, but it's uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden, when you think, okay, I'm just never going to get out of this no-fly zone, boom, there you are. Does that ever happen for you that way? I find
It does. It
Yeah.
does. And I think it happens for a lot of people that way. They just don't know how to put that into words.
I don't either.
It's just, well, no, you did, because it's like you're there, you're done. You got through that portion of it, and now you're on to the next level.
Do you ever wake up and you're in the same environment you went to bed in, same clothes, same everything, and everything not only looks different but feels different?
Feels different.
And I did a piece of content recently on this because it actually happens to me actually more often than I care to admit. But I'll wake up, it's usually after an active dreaming cycle of something that makes no sense. But I'll wake up and in the first 15 seconds, it's like I'm in the same exact room I went to sleep in, but everything feels different. It smells different. It looks different. It feels different. And I feel it all the way to my core. And it's like, okay, something good's going to happen today, or something different's going to happen today. And what I said was in the content was, if you have the power to change the energy in the room that you're in while you are asleep and not aware, imagine the power that you have over your life when you are intentional about it.
Exactly.
And women, especially women, don't realize the power they actually hold.
Right.
Every woman needs to be told at some point, you are a powerful, amazing woman. Never forget that. That's the best compliment I ever got in my life.
Well, it's true. And as women, I think we should say it to each other more, because I think women should support each other more.
I agree.
Like,
There are many that aren't as far on the journey as, and I come across those every day, that they like to tear other people down. Those are just people that I deny access to.
right.
I mean, it's okay to do that. We were taught to be mannerly and we have to be everything to everybody and all that. I'm older than you, I know, but it's okay to deny people access, because they're gonna shift your balance when you could be focusing your attention on people who hold the same, and they're supportive. And I support women in small business. I support women, anybody who's trying to better their life for any reason. There's no degrees, there's no comparisons. I'm 100% behind you. And I can't for the life of me understand why anybody wouldn't be.
Well, and like you just said, I think that has to do with they haven't gone far enough on their healing journey, or they're not on it at all yet.
Right. And maybe they don't realize there is a journey to take.
Exactly.
People spend a lot of time being unhappy, and they just feel like they have to marinate in it, and they don't realize that there's a choice.
Right.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Exactly. So that kind of leads me into another question, because you're doing it already, and I don't even know if you know you're doing it. What's your leadership style?
Oh, that's a toughie. I don't know if there's a name for my leadership style. I'm a person that I appreciate questions. I tend to be Did we have a glitch? Are you there? Okay.
I'm here.
It was
I'm
on
sorry
my
about that.
end.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah, it was
oh,
on my end. I tend to be a bit motherly. I tend to be very, I want you to succeed. I'm not going to blow sunshine in your face, but I am going to celebrate your wins with you. And I don't like having to criticize. I don't like having to, I never did as a corporate person. I didn't like having to fire people. I didn't like having to write people up. However, my leadership style is, if you're going to set a standard, I expect you to keep that standard. I set the bar high for me. I'm going to set the bar high. If you work for me, I'm going to set the bar high for you. And you know why? Because if you don't set the bar high, you're never going to find out what you're capable of. And the number of people, not just women, who have come to me later and said, if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have realized I could do this, and I wouldn't have gone and done this. And I'm like, it wasn't me, it was you. You did it. I mean, I could tell you all day long, but until you take it in and actually take action on it, it's all you. It's all you. All I did was show you something that you hadn't seen before. And you decided to take it in, and you decided to take action on it. But that I still went home feeling good. But at the same time, it really was their win, not mine.
Well, I see it. I think it's still a little bit of your win because your compassion just comes right through. And just being able to show somebody, like you said, raising that bar and showing it to them, but being there in a compassionate way to support them
Right.
to get to that bar and up and over it.
Right.
That is an amazing leadership style that not many people have.
There's part of it, though, that some people don't take to. And part of being supportive is going ahead and being honest, especially if I am invested and I care for you. And I've done this with people before. It's like, okay, I love you to death and you're doing a great job, but this is something I need you to take a look at because you're cutting your own knees off.
Right.
I have been yelled at for this. I've been, over the years, it happened in relationships, at business, and at home. And if I see somebody who I think is deliberately cutting themselves off at the knees and they just have so much amazing, of course, now here's what the thing is, what potential is something that we project onto other people. We see that in them. But pointing out that someone's deliberately self-sabotaging is a difficult thing to do, and they normally don't take it very well. Even if you give it with love, it's a hard thing. I know because people have pointed it out to me, and I had to sit back and go, I need to not be offended. I need to really listen,
Right.
really listen. But that's the one part of that leadership style that I do kind of stumble with or struggle with, especially with people I don't know very well. But other than that, it's totally supportive because I went through so many situations where I didn't have that. I didn't have somebody to go, it's okay that you didn't get it perfect the first time, Marie, just keep going. I didn't have anybody to make me feel okay about not being perfect all the time, or to encourage me to go further. People were encouraging me to just keep your lane, just keep in your place. And, we're going to promote a bunch of men ahead of you and people half your age. And but we love what you're doing. Well, okay, great. Could you pay me?
Right, exactly.
So, but I think that's part of it, is that I try to give other people what I didn't get.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that that's where we really shine, is in why, in what I've seen you building already, is you're doing what you didn't have. I'm doing what I didn't have.
Right.
These things, whether they were available or not, when we needed them, they weren't publicized enough.
Right.
And now being able to put the word out and help somebody with that is making a huge difference. And it is dealing with the tough stuff when you do, in a compassionate, caring way, tell somebody something that they're really going to struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
But you've already laid that groundwork.
Mm-hmm.
You've laid the groundwork that you will be there to support them. So if they want to go off in a little bit of a tiff for a little bit,
That's fine.
it's fine. But at the same time, I think they have the groundwork to know that it's safe enough to come back to you when it's gone through their mind enough to realize that, hey, you know what? She said this to me for a reason, and it's going to continue to propel me.
Honestly, and this is one thing I do think of as a strength of mine, is there's very few people who've ever been a part of my life who don't feel like I'm a safe place. And those very few people are people I deliberately took off the roster,
Yep.
Because of one reason or the other. But most people, and the only reason I can really say this confidently is and I have they've told me, is that I had a customer tell me this the other day, that I always feel better just spending 5 minutes talking to you. I always feel better. And we might have been talking about the weather or chickens, or it doesn't matter what they want to talk about. Right. You always have a smile for me. And I don't always have a smile. I mean, nobody's perfect. And what we see on the screen, you don't see me every day, but when somebody tells me, I know that I can spend 15 minutes with you or 5 minutes with you, and I feel better about my day, that means I'm doing something right. And it doesn't matter whether I'm making X amount of dollars or no amount of dollars. It means that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and making a difference. And to me, that's enough reason to be grateful to have a new day every day.
Exactly. And that fills you up.
It finally gives me a place where I feel like I'm truly me, and I'm truly occupying the space that I'm supposed to. You know, the space I danced around for so long and just was afraid to take hold of. I'm confident enough to be who I am, and if you love me, great, and if you don't, I'm okay with that too. I wish you well and be healed, and all of that. But if not, I don't have to have everybody like me or even appreciate what I do. It doesn't really matter, because I've finally found alignment, right? And it's something that you have to maintain every day. It's not like you find it and it just unpacks and lives with you. You know this, right? We have our days, and it's okay to have your cry. It's okay to scream at the moon. It's okay to. These are all okay. I mean, people get this idea about a personal development journey where I'm just going to have all these great relationships, and I'm going to say all the right things, and we're going to do all the things. And there's times, even with my husband, who we have a good relationship now, and that's partially because of my journey. He's grown nearly as much as I have, but there's times when you want to be like passive aggressive, or you want to say that comment under your breath, or you want to, like somebody walks by you in public and you find yourself mentally judging that person. And you're like, nobody's perfect. And you shouldn't be lashing yourself over that stuff. It's just a process, and you're a human being. That's the most important thing I can tell anybody. You are a human being. Stop holding yourself to a standard that's well above what you're holding to everybody else, and give yourself, like you said, some grace and room to grow. Because if you're holding yourself by the neck, there's no room to grow or do anything. And I think that was the hardest thing, is it's not like you put yourself first and I'm so conceited and I'm only thinking about me. It's like putting yourself first means you have something to give to somebody else, and you have something to offer that's going to help somebody else that might be coming along behind you. I never thought of it that way until 3-4 years ago. We never thought of it that way.
Well, and we've talked a little bit about the school, and there's just, I've met so many amazing people through this school, and it's finally, you finally come to a point that you get like-minded individuals,
right?
And it's something that's pretty rare. You'd like to think that it isn't rare, but it's really pretty rare. And I've met people all over the country. I've met people from other countries, and we're all having very similar experiences, or have had similar experiences, and we are coming through our journeys, and we may all be going off into different directions, doing different things, but our mindset is very similar, and how we approach our lives, and what we're willing to give out, and what we're willing to accept from others.
Right. And the best part of that to me is that saying, and I couldn't possibly quote it today because it's been too long of a day who said it, but you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around. But in this case, with regard to school, just being in the presence of other people that are not only like-minded, but people of excellence, people who are pursuing excellence, it automatically levels up whatever kind of day you had. I get on a Zoom call, and it's all of a sudden, I could be down here when I join, but nobody knows, and then I end up here. Just being, it's a collective. The collective helps each other without really even realizing it. You take joy from other people, you take lessons from other people, you commiserate with other people, and sometimes you mastermind with other people, which is great.
Yes.
And so, where you spend your time and who you spend it with has a lot to do with everything. And I guess we all know that by now. It's not news.
It's not, well, but it sort of is, because I don't think enough people hear it. We're going to start a movement.
There we go. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
So what do you think the future holds? As far as your healing, as far as your business, as far as life?
I am in a place right now where I feel very aligned and very happy and very grateful. However, I do have plans and goals in place. I would love to do some public speaking. I would love to go ahead and finish, that's in the works, finishing my book. And the goal is to be, I would like in the next 3 to 5 years to be fully on my own as an entrepreneur, either as an author or speaker or both. As long as whatever I'm doing is going to empower other people. And it's mostly women, but honestly, I get quite a few men too that will follow along with what I'm doing. And if I can empower somebody to be intentional with their life, or to understand that they're worth being intentional with their life, or that it's okay that what's going on right now isn't working for them and they can change that. You can step outside the lines, you know. That's why my company's called Permission to Thrive, Life Outside the Lines, for a reason. And if you don't give yourself permission to thrive, you can't get anywhere. As long as I'm doing that in some form, and yes, I would love to be, you know, actually making a living at it. That's what my plan is. So I figure the next at least 5, but by the time I'm 60, 62, ready to actually have a schedule that's, I'm 56 now. So it's like the clock is ticking, but not really. That's just kind of a joke. I just want to progress at the level I need to. And, you know, my higher power is God, and God guides me, and I ask him every day to show me what I need to see and teach me what I need to learn and put me where I need to be. And so my goal is there, but also, you know, with an intent of God's plan for me.
That is beautiful. Well, I am going to ask you what I ask everybody else. Will you come back on in the future and talk about your book? Because I definitely see a lot of movement on that.
I would like to. Yeah. I've got actually, yeah, I would like to. I would like to sometime. And I'll, of course, you and I will be in touch and you'll know, but
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm a bit of an open book. If I get the book finished, I'll scream it from the rafters and everybody will know. Especially if somebody wants to publish it.
Well, and in the meantime, while you're working on it, I would love to have you back on and we will talk about your book and, you know, get some ideas out there.
Sure.
Because I think maybe that'll move it along a little bit more. I would love that.
I hope so. I have really enjoyed this, and certainly have enjoyed getting to know you too.
Absolutely. Like I said, I am just beyond thrilled at meeting you, at meeting everybody that I have. It's just the caliber of individuals that I have met has far exceeded anything that I could have ever thought was possible.
I absolutely agree with you. And you're included in my end of that.
Thank you. So I will end this for tonight. And like I said, I'm holding you to coming back on to talk about your book. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I am glad that you are here to join us, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Cheers.